We're back with another episode, RX Radio, episode 3,377 or something.
It's there somewhere.
It's getting up there, which is fucking dope, by the way. Thank you, gentlemen, for making that possible. Today we had Killian on. It was, who was it? It was Matt.
Yep.
It was me.
Yeah.
It was Killian. It was James Mack.
Yeah.
Thayer was in the background doing their things,
Yeah.
which are always the best things. Really interesting conversation today. I thought it was a really cool dynamic between contrasting you, Matt, and Killian. The way you guys think is so different. And we kind of we started off on the topic of motivation discipline. It's kind of a contentious issue in the social media space for really fucking dumb reasons.
Yeah.
Really dumb reasons. So we kind of talked about it and how we got into different routes of why discipline is a form of motivation. Kind of motivation is the overarching term, so that they're not necessarily different. One's not better than the other, but when maybe one applies and the other doesn't. I thought it was a really cool conversation. It gave me a different outlook, definitely on motivation in general and how to apply that to specific people. So I thought that was really cool.
It was nice to have the dynamic.
Yeah.
Like you said, of a Matt and a Killian.
He's the bizarro me, and
You guys are literally the bookends of the fucking
he's
space.
so
Feldman.
true.
He's Feldman from that Seinfeld. Oh
Yeah.
shit! Nobody here watches Seinfeld.
I've watched Seinfeld.
People are gone. You watch Seinfeld?
Yeah, I've seen every
Good
episode.
man.
Yeah. But yeah, that's so true. We don't often have scenarios where we have a display of the two bookends. And I think that this is probably one of the best displays of the two bookends. You guys are so different in every possible way. And it's cool to see how motivation works in both of your brains and the things that make you to do the things that you do. So I thought that was really interesting. I thought there was a lot of really good takeaways in terms of just even people who are working with clients is being able to identify which of these they fall into. Is it risk aversion or kind of loss aversion? Or are they working towards something? Do they want to move towards that thing that they're working towards or goal oriented? So I thought it was a really cool conversation. So I'm really excited to bring this one to you guys. Before we dive into it, just to let you know what's going on in the Prescript world. End of January, we have Prescript Nutrition with Dr. Dwayne Jackson coming, nutrition for body composition. So right in time for the new year. I know probably a lot of your clients or a lot of your new clients have body composition oriented goals this time of year, coming off the holidays, eating, drinking like shit. All that stuff. So this is probably the most complete way that you guys can educate yourself on nutrition for body composition. Dwayne does a great job at taking it from the foundations, the building blocks of the things that you need to know. And even if you're well versed in nutrition and body composition, these are the fundamentals that, they get lost in our consciousness over time. We get very niche and kind of go down these rabbit holes of what's new and what's happening, staying on top of stuff. But Dwayne lays out the basics better than anyone, and then he just builds and builds and builds on top of that. So it gets very specific, and he does a really good job at making it digestible so that you can go out of this class week to week with actionable takeaways. And if there's any confusion, we have the collective to support that. You'll be granted access to the collective with the course where you can have office hours with Dwayne. So you can talk to him directly about the course material if you have any questions or if anything's unclear, which I think is incredibly valuable. Yale PhD. This guy has a PhD from Yale, if that says anything about the quality of education you're going to get from this course. So if it's something you're interested in, I highly recommend checking it out. We'll probably be offering this course twice a year at that cadence for right now. So if you're on the fence, now is the time. It won't be offered till later in the year, 2023. Prescript Nutrition for Body Composition with Dwayne Jackson. Aside from that, shout out to the sponsors. We have the shoes, Vivo Barefoot. Check it out. vivobarefoot.com/RXradio, code RX20 for 20% off your first order. We have HD Muscle, code RX'D. That's going to give you 10% off your supplement order, and that can be paired with any of the offerings that they have for their discounts on their site. Anything else, boys?
That's it. Enjoy.
Hit it, Lundy.
You're tuned in to RX Radio.
Well, we're here.
We're here now, the four of us.
I feel like the podcast for the next couple months, it's just going to be a random assortment.
Yeah,
Like, this is who you get today. Like, not in a bad way.
Well, we got the dog.
We've got the dog. We've got Banksy here. This is her second appearance on the podcast. Matt Penney.
Penney.
Second
Penney,
appearance
yeah.
on the podcast,
twosies.
or first, depending on which order these come out. We all know Killian Hamilton and James Mack, so
Yeah.
we're here. We're here in Miami with Shallow's dog. No Shallow to be seen in Shallow's apartment. It's very intrusive. This is a very intrusive episode. How are we doing, guys?
It's not a home invasion if they're not home. It's just a robbery.
Is that true? Is
Is
that
that
the
how it
difference?
Home invasion, there's a
Like-
person present. A break and enter is an empty home.
Okay, like tie up the family type thing, home
Yeah.
invasion.
Well, I don't need to tie them up. You can do any assortment of things with them. They
Yeah,
just,
that's just the way I
yeah.
picture it.
So you always want them to not be home.
Right. Okay.
There's just something about that word invasion that just
Yeah.
like, it just sets my stomach off.
It's the
We have a whole list of those
Yeah.
words.
home invasion is the
Juicy,
most moist crime you can
Yeah. Those other ones, spores,
So
discharge.
uncomfortable.
How many more do we have?
Couple.
Oh,
Everyone just stopped listening to this podcast.
Yeah.
fuck language.
They're doing moist home invasions. That's it. I'm out. Give me that RX'D code and I'm out of here. I'm just here for 100 pairs of barefoot shoes.
Because toes.
Yeah,
Because
that's
toes.
true.
That's why we listen to RX Radio.
Oh.
Well,
I mean, we all got on here because we were disciplined, not motivated to.
is that
that
why
it?
we got on here? Would you
It's-
say that's the reason that you're here right now?
I would say it's discipline.
It's discipline.
Yeah, it's fear of losing my job.
Okay. Which is different than motivation.
Yeah, because motivated, I would, be excited to be on here. But disciplined is. The
I see.
consequence of me not being on
I
is
see.
greater.
All right. So you're saying that there is a difference, or there
think-
isn't a difference.
I think it's not that there isn't a difference between motivation and discipline. I think it's the misunderstanding that discipline isn't a form of motivation. It's the demonizing of the motivation thing. I think people see motivation as weak now,
Right, as less than.
as less than. It's
Right.
like motivation is how you feel when, things are going well, but discipline is what you do every day. It's like, no, the thing you do on the bad day is because of the motivation that created the discipline, right?
Right.
Like making money. Like you do code stuff on the computer for so many hours a day.
Well, it's boring as shit.
Yeah, but it's like,
But the motivation for not being homeless is kind of the discipline of doing the job.
yeah, the motivation of not being homeless creates the discipline of doing the boring job.
Yeah.
Right. So you're saying motivation is the
Precursor.
positive benefit, like the umbrella term.
Yeah, exactly.
And then discipline is a subsection of that
Yeah.
that maybe is associated with like loss aversion.
Cool.
Right?
Exactly.
That
That's a
type of
great way to
mindset.
explain it. It's the carrot and the stick. Like people say that all the time. People go carrot and the stick and then don't proceed to actually understand what it means.
Right.
It's like,
So you eat the stick.
yeah.
And you plant the carrot.
Yeah, and it's like people use this analogy all the time. It's like, oh, there's a carrot and a stick, and then they stop and they just go somewhere else. It's like, well, no, it's like that's exactly it. Like motivation is an umbrella term. Underneath motivation, we have discipline and reward, right? It's like you're either motivated to run away from the stick or run towards the carrot. One is a reward, and one is obviously a form of discipline, right? And I think we get these things confused because we like deify or we like elevate these people who seem very disciplined to like another level, but we just don't look at how they arrived at being really disciplined, right? Like most people who arrived at discipline have arrived at being disciplined from just every day having to avoid a really negative consequence or being in a structure or an environment that there is always an impending consequence of death or getting kicked out of, say, the military or getting beaten or yelled at. And it's like those are all forms of discipline that created a very disciplined person because they just understand there's dire consequences to all things, right? It's like it's not that they're not motivated. Everyone possesses motivation at all times. The motivation comes in two different ways, but I think demonizing motivation is a negative thought process in this industry.
Yeah, I 100% agree. And I don't really understand where that came from because I'm thinking about how I refer to this stuff on my own, and it's always motivation.
Yeah.
Because that's what it is something that's going to drive me to make a change or make a decision or do something actionable. That's, to me, is motivation, right? I have a reason to do this thing. And then I think there's this kind of like Goggins is kind of the example of this, right? It's like this discipline is almost a privilege. In that scenario, it's like life is kind of easy. It's kind of comfortable for the most part. If you're, I know.
Sorry, she's
falling
falling asleep.
asleep.
This is a perfect example.
Yeah.
Life is this, especially if you're listening to this podcast. Like it's
put
so
a
cute. It's so cute.
It's the cutest.
You have some level of privilege in your life that it's not. You have to create positions where yes, you're disciplining yourself. right? Like going in the gym is the easy example because that's what we all do, and that's probably what the premise of this discomfort on this topic is that we're creating a situation where we have to overcome something that's also self-imposed, right? And there are people that are in these positions where they're in an environment all the time where maybe it is really uncomfortable, and that's, the discipline is to overcome and get out of that situation. But I don't think it applies to most people that use it in that context on the internet. So I totally understand where your feelings are coming from with that. The thing I don't get is that where did this come from? Why did it start?
I think, sorry, this is the best podcast because there's a puppy of all things.
Yeah, seriously.
It's so hard to come back to where it started, but I think it did start from people like Goggins or other people. And I hate, if Dave Goggins wants to come on the RX Radio podcast and do pull-ups or fight to the death or something, I will pledge myself to it. So Goggins, if you're listening, come out.
Those are the choices, by the way. It's pull-ups or fight to the death.
Yeah, we can do it in either. We can do it in either order. But
only one person leaves this podcast.
And that's the other thing. Like, all credit to David Goggins. Like, I know he runs a lot or something and wrote a book, but he doesn't run on the I-95. And all of us, if we arrived at this condo, have been on the I-95 in Miami. David Goggins, yeah, exactly. David Goggins runs like on some highway. Run on the I-95. That's discipline and motivation at the same time. Because if he doesn't keep running, he's going to be murdered by any number of motorists, even if he stays in his own lane. Like that's a position where there is real risk. And I think it's people inventing some form of adversity to almost like. I think because there isn't a real form of discipline to not doing what we do. Like, what is the real consequence to not go to the gym or, not meal prepping? There isn't one, right? It's you kind of if you don't have a motivation, there is no discipline. So I think we've now made discipline so important because a lot of these people who lecture on discipline don't actually have a really solid motivation. Right, they're not going towards anything, so they're only running away from something. So I think the misunderstanding is like, they're not understanding that they lack a reward, right? They have a consequence mindset, right? A lot of the people that we know that get into working out, get really passionate about working out, might be trying to avoid something, right? Maybe they lost weight and trying to keep the weight off. Maybe we're weak and they want to be strong. I don't know. Maybe they got bullied and they don't want to get bullied anymore. So it's like their mindset in the gym is like, I need to do this so I never go back. Yeah. And to them, they only understand motivation as discipline, right? As avoidance, like you said, of risk or of pain. They don't understand like what could potentially be long-term, a stronger form of motivation is reward. Yeah. You know what I mean? It's like, I don't feel disciplined in training because I don't see a net negative to if I don't work out today, right? People are like, well, I have to work out. Like, what happens when you don't work out? I'm like, I don't. Yeah. I just didn't want to.
I'm equating that to, just with myself, my experience and people that I coach is people in competition versus people that have maybe longer term goals. Yeah. Right? I think in competition, people that are training for a specific deadline, I think that's very much loss aversion is what that is if I don't do this, someone else is going to, and they're going to beat me, right? That's discipline. Like, I'm disciplined to do this right now for this so that I'm not shit later down the line. Versus motivation, I think is and it's kind of weird to say it this way, is that discipline is almost like efforts that are going nowhere. Like it's you're trying to avoid something.
Yeah, you're running
as opposed to motivation as that overarching term is very goal oriented, which is kind of weird that I use the example of like a competitive athlete to do that because that is very goal oriented. But that mindset and that kind of that thought process isn't going to get you anywhere besides not losing the thing that you don't want to lose. Yeah. It's not going to get you that reward.
Yeah, and I think that's a perfect example, right? Because that discipline comes from having a very clear and strong motivation. But it's like the same people that talk about discipline, if we were to ask them, and this is a generalization, but if you were to ask most people, like, what is your goal specifically? And Matt, like, you're definitely one of the smartest people in technology and even business and things like that. And it's like, I'm sure if I asked you, like, goals even outside of the gym, they'd be hyper clear. Because every time I talk to you, but every time
too much credit.
No, but it's like every time I talk to you, it's like you explain so many steps to something and it gets somewhere, and I'm like, damn, dude, I'm trying to wake up tomorrow. And it's like when I talk to you about the gym, it's like you're very clear on things too. It's like body weight and what you eat and how much you eat, and it's like if you want to get shredded, like you get shredded immediately. Like it happens so good, and other people
we
don't.
touched on this a bit yesterday, but the height has a little something to do with it. But if I may propose a a moist proposition.
Yes, the moistest.
So juicy.
Moistest. Mental illness is what's behind what you see as motivation out there. And I don't mean it as in like fellow mental illness person here, mentally ill person here. In that, I'll take myself as an example. So if I'm training, if I don't train on a particular day where I'm scheduled to train, I'll just feel like shit. So I am running away from something. I'm running away from my malfunctioning brain, which refuses to allow me to feel good if I don't train. So I have this behavior kind of hard-coded to this point where I know that I can't be productive today if I don't make myself feel good, and I can't make myself feel good if I don't train. That's like black and white for me, right? So it's kind of the same thing as actually it ties into many of the same habits that motivational people go after, right? Like the whole waking up early thing for me is like if I sleep past 6:30, my mental health for the day just plummets so hard, right? Like so if I can get myself out of bed before 6:30, I'll have a great day. But if it's after 6:30, we're in trouble, right? But I mean, like that can be easily abstracted out to me thinking, I'm motivated to get out of bed. I'm not going to let depression win today. I'm getting out. I'm doing a thing. Look at me, how productive I am. And I'm going to put that on the internet. But like the big difference there is that my fucked up brain is not everyone else's fucked up brain, right? Like I have a brain that punishes me when I don't do a thing. So I have a consequence. So I have a consequence that I'm trying to escape. That isn't the same case for everyone else. I'm starting to think the more and more that I see this, that there's some sort of pathology like that's associated to those sort of thought processes, right? As you think, like I talked about this all the time yesterday. It's like, oh yeah, this is a thing that works for me or affects me. Therefore, it must affect everyone else, and that it's very easy to project your own shortcomings on everyone else in the world, especially a market that's ripe for it, like Instagram of all things. But I think that's a mechanism that really gets downplayed and probably ignored.
No, and I like that you brought up the point about mental health, and I totally agree with you, right? And I think, again, like, it is specific for people, right? It's like, if it contributes to your mental health, and, like, I'm all for that, right? There's many things I do that contribute to my mental health, and, or don't, right? I do a lot of shit that ain't helpful either, but it's like, I totally get that, and I'm like, I think that's great for that community. But I think what we all see a lot of the time is when that information is told, like you said, to a general population that might not actually, potentially have these things they're trying to avoid. If you marketed it like, hey, if you have depression, anxiety, if you have obsessive disorder, if you have obsessive compulsive disorder, here are all these, motivations and tasks and habits you can give yourself to be beneficial. That's really good. Like, I think that's positive. But if you just tell a bunch of people who were moving through life unabated by problems that now they have a problem because they aren't disciplined. It's like maybe they never needed that,
Yeah.
They weren't avoiding anything by not going to the gym, but if every day they hear that they're less than because they don't work out at 6 a.m., they don't get up at 4 a.m., they're like, well, that's the idea. It's like, I'm not doing it, someone else is, I'm less than that person. It's like, are we possibly taking people from the ledge and now pushing them over rather than, for you, it pulled you out of it? You know what I mean? Like, you training and getting up early pulls you away from depression. Somebody else, it might put them into it if all they see is this is what all successful people do.
Yeah, 100%. The shoe has to fit. Ultimately, the intervention has to fit the person. And again, we're talking from the perspective of mental health here, right? My wife's a psychiatric nurse, so I fortunately get a lot of like secondhand understanding of how all this stuff works. And the single most effective intervention in depressed people, and I'm going to pull this one out of my ass. If there's any actual informed people out there, please do correct me. Consistent wake-up time.
Yeah,
interesting.
Waking up at the same time every day has the greatest impact on depression and anxiety.
I think, like, to aid in that, I am not an expert on mental health in any way. You obviously have the closest proximity to knowledge on it. But even just in researching skill acquisition, and like skill acquisition then became a wormhole to like all these other portions of the brain, right? And one part I think that I see, because I'm so against like stoicism and atomic habits and all that, so I took a look into it. But like you're saying, is consistent wake-up times and battling depression. One of the things is like positive interventions in your life to regain control. Yes. Oftentimes people with mental health lack I talked about this in skill acquisition, right? We have this idea of sense of agency. And sense of agency is the belief in oneself to control their environment or have control or impact on their environment. The other portion of sense of agency, the opposition to it, is a control belief. And a control belief is usually a system. It's not in flux. Sense of agency is in flux throughout the day, like hunger and insulin and all these other processes. It's like I can feel really in control when I'm at the gym, and I might feel out of control in traffic. My sense of agency changes. A controlled belief is a system of belief that isn't exposed to change. So people through nature and nurture, as they go through development and adulthood, come onto controlled beliefs. Some of those beliefs could lead to a mental illness where they feel they can't control their environment. So instilling a consistent wake-up time, that gives person control. It's like I woke up myself every day at 5 a.m. That changes a controlled belief to a new sense of agency. And I'm all for that. But like you said, there's a positive spin on it. There's a negative spin. And then, like you said, the shoe must fit for the population, right? And I had a client of mine the other day message me, and they said something about how really successful people work. And it was just a habit that they said that really successful people had. And honestly, I don't want to make up what it was now. But when I read it, I thought to myself, no, really successful people have assistants. You know, like they have a personal assistant and a person who schedules calls and probably a series of people who filter messages to a really successful person once that person becomes successful. Yep. Like Elon Musk doesn't check his own email and call people back. Somebody is doing that for Elon Musk. You know, he's not getting up at 4 a.m. and answering his emails. Yeah. He's answering one email from a guy who says 2 options, A or B. What do you want to do? And he goes, yeah, let's do A. You know, he didn't have to make any of the smaller decisions. So it's like we conflate these simplicities that successful people adopt outside of the context of them, right? Like I don't have a fucking assistant. I literally like put out a program on the internet a couple months ago, and I manually sent it to every single person who bought it. Yeah. Like I didn't use an app. Like you sent me money, and I opened.
My ears are burning.
I know. Like, I opened an email, and
you gotta automate that shit.
And it's like, and for sure, right? I created this. I created a problem for myself that I could have easily solved, but I didn't. But it's like I did that manually, right? Like I typed an email address in. I would like to think I'm successful, but I'm not ultra successful. And it's like, yeah, I don't want to have a thing and a person that answers these things and makes Calendly. You know what I mean? It's like there is more room for human error, and I think we're getting so much information either from people who are very successful who forgot where they came from, or from people who are viewing successful people and trying to overlay the transparency over themselves and going, well, here's all the things that guy does that I don't do.
Well, that's an important thought too, is that what's their definition of a successful person? Yeah. Right? We can look at people that objectively have a lot of money and say, oh, they're clearly successful, but I don't think people are able to superimpose their lifestyle and their goals with what the definition of success in that direction looks like. Right? Like, I don't want to be the same successful as Elon Musk. No. I don't even think I want as much money as Elon Musk. Like, can you imagine the shit that comes with that?
The danger of me possessing funds like that.
Yeah, that's terrifying. But understanding that you're comparing yourself to someone that has completely different circumstances as you, and the comparison in itself is harmful. Right? So it's, I think the context of that, even just asking that question, it warrants more questions. Like, why is that your gauge of success? What is your definition of success? And then once you have that definition, then you can start to identify things that are going to be maybe sticking points around motivation or discipline. You know, the positive, the negative. What do you want to move away from? What do you want to move towards as you do that? And then you can start to make actionable decisions or make a game plan around what is your definition of success.
Exactly.
And I don't think people take the time to understand that when they're just looking at successful people, right? Like I don't think there's very many mainstream successful people that I would want to model my life after, because my life, my circumstances are exactly. It's so much different. It's so much different than theirs. And my definition of success, it may have some overlapping values, right? Like something that's very important to me is freedom. I want the freedom to do the things I want to do when I want to do them. Yeah. And money gives you that freedom, but a lifestyle like Elon Musk has, it's everyone knows you're Elon Musk. There's like pictures of his pasty white ass like jumping off a yacht.
Yeah,
did you hear that whole thing?
The beginning one, and then Matt hit it with his foot and turned it off.
When did he hit it with his foot?
How long ago did that happen?
Hopefully not too long. We might be able to bring it up.
All right.
Continue. Elon Musk, pasty.
We're just going to continue on like nothing happened. You guys probably missed about 5 minutes of that.
Whatever.
Yeah. But yeah, Elon Musk, as the cliff notes, is pasty white. He jumps off yachts, and people know this because they know who Elon Musk is.
Yeah.
Right? And with that, there comes a lack of freedom with being that person, which does not directly align with my definition of success. Exactly. Right? So I don't want to model what I define success is after Elon Musk just because he's been very successful in his own right, in his own industry with his circumstances.
Yeah, like I'm really glad that you brought this up on this example of like modeling yourself after successful people. Is this idea is kind of horseshit, right? It just doesn't work.
Right.
And I mean, I'll use the example of what my daily morning routine will look like comparative to like the Instagram bullshit of whatever Elon's daily routine is. Like, you know, like the 4:05 a.m. wake up, 4:10 take a shit, 4:15 get out of bed, right? Like, but
Wait, why does he take a shit before he gets out of bed?
don't ask me, ask him.
Yeah. Rich people shit.
But you know, it's a lot different, right? As my life looks like, I wake up, I make breakfast, but then I got to do the dishes, and I got to clean up the kitchen. And if it's Friday morning, I got to bring the garbage out. And oh shit, it snowed last night, so I have to shovel the driveway and the sidewalk. So all that stuff is going to take about 2.5 to 3 hours out of my morning, depending on how extensive it gets. And then I get to start work. Elon doesn't do those things.
Right.
He doesn't need people to do those things. But on the flip side of the coin, because I do those things, it also means that I have other aspects of my life that the so-called ultra successful don't have access to. Like a stable family. But what I really mean though is like I like to spend time with my wife very much. Like
right.
I like to watch TV with her and chill out, right? Like I need the downtime. She needs the downtime. I like to spend time with her. It works out perfectly. I can't live this lifestyle where I get out of bed and my pure existence is to just do the work. And then I like go back to bed because I just don't get another crack at this, right? Like I'm not going to be sitting on my deathbed thinking about, man, I really wish I spent more time working.
Yeah.
Right? Like, but of course, at the end of all of this, right? Like, you're either the point is you're either going to do the work or you're not, but you don't have to be a weird, cringy. I'm up at 4 a.m. and then I do whatever it is that you guys have ragged on people for the past couple of years that they do.
Everything.
The demands of life are
Existing.
like they're omnipresent. They're always there, and you have to handle them. And you need to accept that when ultra successful people go on Instagram and blast the shit that they do, it works for them because they don't face the same pressures of real life that the rest of us have to face.
Yeah.
Right? They have money that they can throw at those problems to make them go away so they can focus on higher order stuff.
Absolutely.
This is, unfortunately, until we are at that point, it's going to be our life, right?
Yeah.
I also think there's a facade within that, though. How many people do we know actually stick to exactly what they say their morning routine is? I'm going to say 0.1%.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like, do you do the same thing every morning, Matt? You're probably close-ish.
He probably does. Yeah.
But like
Yes.
most of us, not necessarily. We don't have a morning routine.
And
I
if
don't
you
have
do, it's not something to brag about. It's
no,
just life.
You get up.
Yeah.
You
Just do whatever you do.
brush your teeth and then go and do what you need to do. Type scenario.
Yeah, like
That's
I had
for now, I think.
Yeah, I had a very strict routine when I worked in construction because I literally had to be somewhere at 6 a.m.
Yeah.
And like
if you weren't there, you were fucked.
I needed a job. I was motivated to make money, and to get there at 6 a.m., I had to do the same thing every day because of traffic, getting in and out of downtown Toronto. And I was like, well, it's just the discipline of being late if I don't follow the same exact steps every day. It wasn't like, oh, my life is so controlled. I was just like, I can't be late. Like, I have to go to the same Tim Hortons at the exact same time or else the drive-thru is full. I have to put my stuff out the night before. I just don't have time in the morning. But then when I started working on the internet, like, I really liked what you said, Matt, about the idea, like, you getting up at the same time is like, you know, it's like a sense of control and it's winning for you. If I had to get up at the same time every day, I would put a bullet in my head. Because to me, it's the opposite. To me, getting up at the same time every day is actually taking control away from me. And my big thing in life is having complete and utter control of everything I do, where I am, how I show up, and the idea of any part of it getting taken away, like, infuriates me.
Yeah, I respect that.
And yeah, so for me, it's like I don't set an alarm. I relatively wake up at the exact same time every day, which is very early. But it's like just not having the alarm and just getting up. And like one day it's 4, one day it's 5:30. It's always before 7. And I'm always on time once my day starts. But I'm like, I'm not setting an alarm. I'm not getting up. I'm not eating the same breakfast every day. I'm like, I'm going to get up and everything that happens in my day is just going to be in the moment what I want to do. You know, it's like when I owe someone my time, I always do it. Like, I'll be there. I'll do the thing I have to do. But it's like when it's the in-between chaos time, I want it to be chaos.
Yeah.
Yeah, I respect that. Like for me, this is like kind of the complete perfect inverse as to what works for me, and probably a perfect demonstration of how the shoe has to fit the foot, right?
Yeah.
Like for me, my big thing, and I've just been using different terms to describe the same idea.
Yeah.
I like to think of it as locus of control.
Yeah.
That's just the term
Sure.
I'm familiar with, right? But we're talking about the same
Yeah,
thing.
exactly.
Whereas if I wake up at a certain hour and I eat some certain foods and I take care of all the things in the house, then my locus of control is internal, right?
Yeah.
I can keep everything. I want to keep it there as much as I possibly can. Yeah. And that means that I need to be able to keep tabs on everything that I'm doing all the time, which kind of sounds a bit overwhelming. And truthfully, it is, right? But over the course of the day, if I can touch all the bases that I have my hands in, then we're in great shape. And to that end, this is probably something you would hate a ton, is on my work days, I'll generally schedule stuff. I'll say, like, I'm going to work on platform for a few hours, and I'll throw that down my calendar. Then the meeting, and then in the afternoon, I'll put down whatever other stuff I'm working on. Mm-hmm. And then I find that the more that I'm able to strictly hold myself to that calendar and not let tasks overrun, the better that I tend to feel, just because I feel like I executed on the plan that I felt like would put me in the best position to control the day.
Yeah.
Right? So it's when shit goes off the rails and I start like getting into unplanned time, or like I'm chasing down like a bug or something that's taking forever, that's when the stress starts to mount up, and the stress affects the work, and then that makes everything take longer. So yeah, like it would be opposite, but that might be something that you would find to be like very wretched, like a very horrible habit, right?
Yeah, I think that I like talking. So one thing for everyone who listens to RX or watches RX, like outside of the podcast, me and Matt talk all the time, and I'm always so curious. When I ask you a question, I'm so invested in what you answer, because it's always not what I was going to do. I'm like, hey, Matt, how about this? And then Matt gives me an answer, and I go, I'm really glad I asked.
It's so interesting because, like, have you heard like left brain versus right brain?
Yeah.
Like, I think that's exactly what we're doing right now, because you're very much in the creative realm. You think very abstract on a lot of things. You think different than most people would think, right? I think a lot of people are more towards center. I think, is it right brain that's more creative?
I think it's left brain is creative, right?
Honestly, I have
No, you're right. It's right brain is
right
creative
brain
because I'm
left-handed.
I'm left-handed.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
You got it.
This is a perfect example.
Yeah.
So you're probably more skewed towards that right brain, right? You're more in the creative realm, more abstract things. And Matt, you'd be very much left brain, right? You think very systematically. You're very logical. You like having the calendar line up. I mean, I could be totally wrong, but for example's sake, it's
No, you're right. You're right.
Yeah.
It seems like this is a really, really good comparison. And I haven't really thought of things that way, and I don't necessarily like classification like that or titles like that. But I think there's a stark difference between the way that both you guys approach situations, but the ability for you to be able to see things from his perspective and him to be able to see things from your perspective, I think that gives a really good overview of a situation. So
100%. You kind of find yourself in the middle, right? Like, it's funny you'd mentioned like the idea of assigning tasks would be overwhelming to me, and you're not wrong, but it's, I think, overwhelming for a reason people don't understand. I would love to have a schedule where I'm like, this is the time I do this, but I'm so anxious that something is going to change that, and the idea of that changing would be something out of my control, and then it actually makes me like really upset.
So it's got nothing to do with the schedule. It's got to do with the schedule being interrupted.
Correct. Yeah. So it's like, I'm like, I'm going to work on a design on Adobe at 3:00, and I'm stoked for it the whole day. Like, I'm waiting to open my laptop and go into Illustrator and like send Jiunta some shitter fucking t-shirt design. Then it's like the idea that something happens and that doesn't happen. Like, dude, I throw a brick through a window.
You know, it's funny because that specific thing wouldn't bother me in the slightest.
See, that's really interesting.
And I would have, but like the thing that does bother me makes me feel the same way that makes you feel.
Yeah.
Right? Like, I get the same anxious feeling.
Correct.
If I have something important and it's not my calendar and I'm staring at blank space, that's what makes me anxious, right? Like, it's like unanticipated free time and my brain's just like, are you worried? I'm like, about what? It's like, are you worried?
Yeah.
Because you should
worried.
be.
Yeah, it's like I'll log on for the calls with Jiunta and Shallow, and I log on like 10 minutes beforehand, and I just sit because like it's got to start at the time it's got to start. And between the 10 minutes I log on early and the actual moment it's supposed to start, I'll check my email 9 times for like, did the call change? Did I log into the wrong thing? I'm like, where am I? This is supposed to happen. I'm like, I'm just there too early. But I'm there too early because I'm like, I'm going to make sure that in this 10 minutes, if anything happens, I can fix it so that I'm still here when this call is supposed to happen. Like, if some derelict dude rolls into the coffee shop and I have to beat him up, I'll still log on to this call. It's like, I'm here and at least the camera will be on as I'm like pummeling some dude in the background. But yeah, I think we're so different. But then, like you said, I think the thing to remember, and the same thing to remember with discipline and motivation, consequence and reward, is like the feelings of anxiety or the feelings of loss or failure are the same for everyone. Like the actual internal, the way it presents itself is the same, right? Like some people, when they get upset, they cry.
Oh yeah, and that's just normal. You're just overwhelmed with stress.
Exactly.
Right? That's just one way it comes out.
Yeah,
right?
and other people, maybe they take a 2x4 and like smash it on something.
Yeah.
And it's like one might be seen, and obviously for many reasons is more accepted in society. But you have to understand, like you said, that internal locus of control. Is that what you said?
Yeah, like I like to keep the locus of control internal.
Okay,
right?
cool. So it's like
the same thing that you're saying.
But that's the idea. It's like that being violated, no matter how it's violated, no matter how those emotions present, they're actually the same emotion. And I think that's what we get lost in as well, right? It's like a lot of these things are the same way when they present themselves. If somebody like gets really overwhelmed and like cries or gets silent, or somebody else like yells and smashes stuff, it's like that person, they both feel the exact same way. They're just demonstrating these emotions differently, right? And I think for a lot of us, like we're avoiding those. And I think it's unfortunate that we might shame one more than the other, just like shaming motivation or discipline or consequence or reward, right? So we have to understand they're both avoiding and therefore moving towards the same thing. We're trying to feel better and not feel worse. We shouldn't shame people because their driving force to feeling better is like, I really want to get $100, or like I really want to look sick. It's like, that's great. If that is the driving force for you, that's awesome. If it's not feeling like shit for the rest of the day, equally as cool. If you both go to bed feeling okay about your day, you know, like that's okay.
This is funny because we talked about temperature earlier and like Fahrenheit and Celsius.
Yeah.
Right? But heat and cold are the same thing. It's the presence or lack of warmth.
It's
right?
a lower concentration of
exactly.
heat energy.
Exactly. And I think that sounds like exactly what you're saying in this. It's you know, are we motivated? Are we disciplined? Are we trying to move away from something, or are we trying to move towards something? And everyone kind of just is somewhere on that thermometer. It's just, are they lower down not lower down, that's not good language, but are they closer to the I don't want to lose something, or closer to the I want to move towards something?
Yeah.
And I think just identifying in yourself which motivation type you are can help you pair that more accurately.
Yeah, I think that's actually a good way of putting it, right? Like what style of motivation better motivates you, right? Because like discipline for me doesn't motivate me. It causes this knee-jerk reaction. I just get really tense.
Yeah. Well, here's the thing. You're a human being.
Yeah.
Right? You have unique things that make you tick.
Yeah.
You have unique likes, dislikes. Human beings are just too unique and different to respond to the same stimuli all the time, right? So for you, your stress management methodologies work, but you can only guarantee that they're going to work for you, right? The idea of getting up early in the morning and doing all of your work, right? Like that's somebody else's coping strategy.
Yeah, exactly.
But if you try to superimpose that on you, that's just you wearing a shoe that's 10 sizes too small, right? You're panicking. It's too much.
Yeah. We should
Thanks,
just say
what do you think, Banksy? What do you think, sweetheart?
we should save all these sounds and just use them.
Just throughout,
randomly,
just superimpose them. But I think that was an incredible conversation. It went directions that I didn't really think it was going to go, but I think it was very productive, and I think a lot of people can learn a lot from that, or at least kind of take that and layer it in with self-awareness and try and figure out how to move in the direction or away from the direction that they want to.
Well, I think just from the conversation, if they can identify what type of motivating technique works best for them, and then just apply that concept to their goals, considering we're coming into the new year, etc. If you take this, you can then actually probably achieve your goals if that's something that you wanted to try and do.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yep, and that's it.
Done.